Our last example for this section has to do with estimating a sample size. So what happens in the real world is that you want to, when you do your research and collect data, you're trying to control for your error, meaning that you don't want large margins of error. You want small margins of error, so you're more accurate with your estimate, right? With your estimate for the population parameters, whether it's a mean or proportion. So we did this in the previous section also. But on this one here, we want to estimate, right, how many people we would need to sample to control for a certain margin of error. And so here are two equations we end up using. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about the algebra, but some of you may be interested in it. But here's one equation we use. Here's the second one we use, depending on the situation. So the margin of error formula is this, what we know. This is the algebra by cross multiplying, squaring both sides, right? You end up at the n, means sample size, right? Is an estimate. We're trying to figure out what's the smallest sample size we need, right? So n has to be greater than or equal to this part here. Your critical z, depending upon your confidence interval, your margin of error, how many percentage points do you want to be, or you want your error to be, and then times p times q if we have some estimate for what p and q are, okay? And in the real world, many times we don't have that estimate, and so what happens is if you don't know an estimate for the population proportion, if you don't have an idea or some clue, then what we do is we use this equation here. And so when we plug the numbers in, what we end up with is an estimate for how many people we need to survey to control for an error. So on this problem here, we want a margin of error of 3 percentage points. And we want to do it with a 90% confidence level. So that's our z value. There's our e, our margin of error. We don't know p and q. We don't have an estimate for this situation, right? And so we just plug in. Notice the numbers that go in here. Z is 1.645. That's our critical value for 90% confidence, which we did in a previous lesson. We're using 0.25 because that's the equation we have here. And then 0.03 because that's your 3%, right? That comes from 3%. And when you plug that in, you get 751. 0.467, and what we're going to do is we're going to round up because we can't have 751.6 people. So we always round up to the nearest whole number, which is 752. So we would need to include 752 people in the survey to have a margin of error of 3%.